Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Catholic Truth Podcast, where we preach and teach the Catholic faith, which has come down to us over 2,000 years from Jesus and the apostles. We want to help you to know your faith, love your faith, and live your faith with purpose and passion. And many times on this show, we really want you to have a deeper walk with Jesus Christ, to be transformed by Jesus Christ. And we have people of all walks of life who have been transformed by Jesus Christ as we're recording the show. Yesterday was Divine Mercy Sunday, where we celebrate the infinite divine mercy of our Lord and our God, who raises the dead, who cures the sick, who still helps the blind to see, who still frees captives from death and from slavery. And today we have the most unbelievable story of a woman who was freed by Jesus Christ and was helped in a crazy story. In fact, her name was Lena, and she is from Europe, and she comes from a Catholic family that actually is very dysfunctional and abusive, and mixed a lot of non-Catholic things with Catholicism. Needless to say, she ended up becoming an atheist at a young age. She ended up joining the occult and Satanism, New Age. She was suicidal, ended up being homeless, got into drugs, had several exorcisms, and a lot of divine help to help her on the way to find the true light of the world, who is Jesus Christ. This is one crazy story, people, and that she has an amazing story. And so we're having her on the show. Her name is Lena, and I would like to welcome her to the show. Welcome, Lena, and thank you for being open and willing to share your story today.
Welcome. Thank you for having me.
Yes, absolutely. Woo, your story is crazy. I mean, you've been through a lot. You're still going through a lot. Jesus is, has you on the right path. And your story shows that, just because you have a troubled childhood, just because your parents were messed up, or just because religious people who claim to be religious but don't actually live it, they often turn people away. People will say, oh, well, I grew up with nuns and they were mean, and so I left the church. Or I had an abusive family, or my family was too Catholic and they turned me off to the faith. And so these people walk away from religion. They walk away from the faith. They walk away from God. And that's never a good thing when you walk away from God. We should not let other people poison our relationship with God. And that's exactly what happened to you. And it had detrimental consequences in your life. Can you maybe start by talking a little bit about your family and just some of the problems that led you to become an atheist?
Yes, I'll try to condense it as much as possible, because it is one crazy story. So yeah, as you said, I grew up in a so-called Catholic family. It's just because somebody goes to church and claims to be Christian does not mean that at heart they actually are. And so the family was very dysfunctional. There were all kinds of abuses there, you name it, really. And every Sunday, we were going to church and pretending happy family. It was upper middle class family, very much respected, very educated. And I saw this phoniness, which I grew to loathe so very much, that and I mingled it. I mixed it together with Catholicism and Christianity, that I wrongly, obviously, but kind of logically at that time, assumed that if Catholics are like that, that means maybe, atheism at that time, or maybe the other side later on, is good. I never wanted to be a bad person. I never wanted to go into a cult or to turn away from God because I wanted to be bad. Just the opposite. But as you said, we must not let other people poison our faith and our connection to God. But it's easier said than done when it happens to us when we're children, because we don't necessarily understand.
That's a very interesting point. So you said that, and I hear this from a lot of teenagers. I hear this from even a lot of adults that, I didn't want to, necessarily go down a bad path in life. I was, even in some cases, looking for God, but in your case, what was said to be God was actually seemed evil, wrong, abusive. I mean, you were abused in many different ways, not just spiritually or emotionally, but different ways. And that if that's what's good, then maybe it's not actually good. And so you were on a search for what is good. And I guess that led you to atheism, like, or just to not believing eventually.
Yes, I mean, at age probably 15, I just came to conclusion that, um, since mother, father, brother, and a lot of Christians or so-called Christians are so-called evil or do evil things, then why believe in God in the first place? It didn't make any sense to me logically. It I didn't have any proof of so-called God, etc., etc., and the only proof I had was of the abuse that I had. So I just wanted to do everything to be unlike them, to be just the opposite of them. So yeah, naturally I came to that kind of conclusion. I thought the other side must be good, which of course is not the case.
And then what happened after that? You were, I think, about 19 years old, and you went to LA. What happened, in your life at that time?
Yeah, I just wanted to be as far away as possible. I kind of lost my memory for a while because the abuse was so severe, including sexual abuse. And the abuse was so severe that I kind of blanked things from my memory. I knew something was off, but I didn't remember exactly what. And I wanted to go as far away as possible from my parents and never come back. So I went to America as a babysitter first, then I was a waitress, receptionist, you name it, pretty much everything. And I met my then husband. We didn't have church wedding, obviously, because I was an atheist. He was an atheist. I met him in New York. He's from Japan, so yeah, it was quite a mixture of everything.
And then, like, did you guys have a good marriage, or, like, what happened? Did your life start to get better at that point when you were away from your family and you got married and all, or did it actually
Uh,
get worse?
it started to get better and worse at the same time. It was different. I regained my memory when I was with my husband, so I will forever be with my partner, should I say, because we never had church wedding, ex-partner. So I regained my memory, and I will eternally be grateful um, for him for that. And he told me that it's okay to be angry at parents. So for the first time, I allowed myself to actually feel anger for what they've done, but it went a bit too far, and I started to be way too rebellious in my 20s, and the rage was a little bit uncontrollable at that time. Yeah,
The
and
the the
and
what was
my
uncontrollable?
husband, my rage
Oh, your
against my
rage.
parents. Yeah,
Okay.
because I remembered what happened. They confirmed. It wasn't like they denied, and it was my word against theirs. They said, yeah, they remember, but I'm just making too big of a deal. And I just, whoa, I went mental. But my husband, again, we went through a lot of beautiful moments, especially in Tokyo, because his parents are from Tokyo. He's from Tokyo, and we lived there around 3 years altogether, and it was beautiful. But at the same time, unfortunately, my luck, the marriage was physically abusive from my husband's side, and I wasn't a saint either. Yeah.
Was it physically abusive from the beginning, or did that kind of develop over time?
In the beginning, it was a little bit, and I think because of the violence that I've experienced as a child, I had a very high tolerance to
Mm.
violence. For me, it was kind of normal. I didn't know any better.
Right.
But deep inside, I knew that there's something wrong with it, obviously. And then instead of, oh, I don't know, just going away because I felt there's nowhere else to go because I was heavily depressed by then, I started revenging behind his back.
And so you started trying to get revenge on him and do things that were bad just to get back at him. And you hated your parents. You had a lot of rage toward them. So you're filled with rage, anger, depression,
Yeah, yeah,
confusion, and pretty much
yeah.
just mixed up in every way. And then I guess this probably led to what would happen next. I think you had like an encounter with an evil spirit or something. Would you mind sharing a brief bit about that?
Yes, I have no idea where that came from. It was 2014, September to be exact. I remember it was in Tokyo. And obviously I didn't believe in any spirits or anything. I just didn't read any religious books whatsoever, ever. So I went into, I'll just call it a trance. I think I went into trance. I was wide awake. I wasn't asleep anymore. I was wide awake. I went into trance, and I would call it a spirit started to I don't want to sound crazy, but yeah, a spirit started kind of talking to me in a very, very high pitch voice, on the same tone all the way through, like a white noise. And it introduced itself and said some things that kind of that didn't make sense to me at that time, and introduced itself and its symbol. And so and the trance ended 10-15 minutes later. And so I thought I went cuckoo. To be honest, I thought I just became mentally ill because of the stress and severity of the abuse and everything. So yes, all I wanted to do is get a good shrink and get good pills if necessary. But but for once, my curiosity was useful, not damaging. And I googled, just out of curiosity, the worst that I heard, and unfortunately it had something to do with heavy and dark demonology, which is not very well known for Christian faith, which is more even more weird, because obviously I never heard of any other religion than Christian, apart from some kind of Buddhist books that I came across once in a while, but I wasn't interested because it was more like a philosophy.
Right. So
Yeah.
this spirit knocked you down and started speaking in a high pitched voice and giving you all this information about itself, and even telling you what symbols were associated with it and that sort of thing. And you had no idea. That's what's crazy is like you were willing to go to counseling and get medication to fix what you thought might be schizophrenia or something. But then everything you looked up online was already associated with this particular being in the occult and demonology world. And like, that's crazy. Now, did that freak you out? Did that scare you? And like, what happened after that?
Yeah. Yeah, I instead of reaching the phone and calling my mother to organize a good shrink meeting, I remember I grabbed the phone. I didn't even dial the cheaper number, because from Tokyo to Poland, that was quite a sum of money to call, and I was too shaking. I just dialed the number and I was like, Mom, pray for me, pray for me. I didn't believe in prayers, but suddenly I did when I was scared. And I said, Mom, pray for me. I was really, really, really really scared. I was trembling, I was shaking, and I said the name of the spirit. Obviously my mother didn't know what that meant, but yeah, she prayed to Michael Archangel and to a few and she recited some few other prayers, and for a year or so I became a scared, quite a good Christian, because I was scared. But that was probably that was the wrong reason why I turned to church. I was simply scared. Yeah.
Well, it's not a bad thing. I mean, fear, can put us on the right road and keep us straight and narrow, Now,
yes, if it's not the only reason, but it turned out to be, I think, the main or only, at that time, later on. But
yeah, it eventually should evolve from fear to love, and understanding.
Yeah.
Now, you said you had, at this point, you had 2 exorcisms or something on that idea. Did you see a priest or anything?
Yeah, at first I saw a few psychiatrists, because I just wanted to double check that everything's all right with me. Well, I knew something's not all right. I just didn't know what. So I was much more, I didn't believe in anyone, priest and thing. And I never heard of exorcisms or anything apart from some kind of exaggerated movie stories and things like that. So it didn't make any sense. So I went to a few psychiatrists and told them what happened. And none of them could explain it, and one of them, who was not religious, suggested me to go to an exorcist.
That's interesting. I find that
yeah.
very interesting, because if they're not religious, they don't really believe in God. It's like you almost think they would find any other reason or explanation possible for your condition or what happened to you, which they could even recommend a number of things. You're crazy, you're schizophrenic, but they didn't. They said, we just don't understand this. We think this is more, but we don't know how to help you. And maybe a priest can. And that's very interesting because my friend's mom is she does like psychology, and she actually had to go to 2 live exorcisms to see the difference between people who are psychologically crazy and insane and can do weird things, and then something that's far beyond that, and that's like possession or like exorcism and stuff. And she said it's
Yeah.
one's much different than the other. And so what happened? You ended up calling a priest?
Well, again, my mom organized this because I had no idea where to start, and I was trembling. I was all the time very, very, very scared. And so my mom organized an exorcism, and that one exorcist also suggested to go to another one as well. And yeah, well, there was one I remember. There was a third one, but before that, but he was like, "Oh, come on, demons do not introduce themselves," and it was quite damaging to me because he ridiculed something that I was really scared of. So, but I didn't give up. Of course, what's very important is that to remember that priests are just human beings. So if somebody, just like parents, so if somebody doesn't behave exactly the way they should, given the situation, just not to give up and to try further. And so these other 2 exorcists did perform exorcisms on me, and obviously it was just long prayers and denouncing evil and etc etc, and yeah, and it was a one-off experience, so I never experienced anything so-called supernatural again, if that makes sense. Yeah.
You mean in a negative way, like you didn't have the spirits come back or attack you in any way? Like once you had
No.
those exorcisms, you felt like free from it all?
Yeah, I was still scared it's going to come back, but it never did. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And did you feel more peaceful, and did you feel more like happy, and like even though you were still scared, did you feel a bit more peaceful and free after the exorcisms?
Yeah, I was grateful. Obviously, I was grateful that such thing exists and that I could get some help.
Yeah.
Obviously, I started to feel safer and safer and safer and safer. And when I felt properly safe, I started to be curious again, unfortunately. And
Oh,
yeah, the curiosity started to take over. It's so bad. Like curiosity really does kill a cat and people. And so yeah, when we feel too safe, sometimes we just take the safety for granted. And in
instead
my
of
case, that was at least the situation.
yeah, and instead of like falling on Christ and staying with him, it's like you almost like just yeah, let your curiosity get the best of you. And that was kind
Hmm.
of led to your rock bottom in a sense, right? It led to some really bad times in your life. And can you talk about that? Like what happened after you got curious? What did you do?
Well, I started to research more and more about that name and what that meant and what it represented, and I started to feel in a way, it's horrible and it's creepy, but in a way I started to feel chosen. I was thinking, why such a powerful demon would choose me to talk to me? And so maybe there's something special about me, and there was a little bit of pride in that. And so yeah, I started to be curious more and more, and I started to research and research and research, and one thing led to another, and I started to get into occult deeper and deeper.
Wow. Um, and at this time in your life, I think you had said that everything just kind of fell apart too, which made it easier to get into, because maybe you could, just share about, your family and everything that just broke down, which kind of made it easy for you to find these people because you were desperate, right?
Oh yeah, they were happy to help. Just happy to help. Around 5 years ago, my marriage, well, the non-church wedding marriage, it broke down completely. Just a lot of violence happened. He left me. I didn't even leave him. And at the same time, my parents stopped speaking to me because of some misunderstanding. That it's a long story, very strange misunderstanding. And them as Christians, knowing that I have nowhere to go and I didn't have any property with my then husband, etc., etc., they just left me basically on streets, and I needed to escape to England. I went to Poland to have some safety after my marriage fell apart, and I needed to escape back to England to escape my parents, and two major occult cults were just too happy to help. Yeah.
And you were like, how were you like mentally at the time, emotionally, between all of this?
Horrible. It was one of the worst times of my life. I'm not saying the worst, because childhood was probably equally bad, but I was suicidal, heavily suicidal.
And that's so.
And I
You
felt,
said,
I felt I have nothing to lose. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
oh, it's okay. I'm just thinking it's crazy because like you feel suicidal, you're on the streets, you don't really have any place to go. And how did you get involved with the occult societies? Like, how did they reach out to you or like find you?
I reached out to them. I was thinking, okay, I have nothing to lose. I might as well try the societies that I was researching anyway, because I was curious about the occult, and I was thinking maybe they have the answers. It wasn't like I wanted to be bad. Again, I was thinking that maybe they had the answers that I was looking for. Maybe actually Yahweh, as they believe, is the evil one, and maybe they, as they believe, the other side is the right one, the light bearer. So the good light bearer, if that makes sense, which it is, of course.
Right.
But anyway, yeah, so they were just too happy to help, and even gave me money and never wanted it back, and allowed me to stay as long as I needed in their main lodge.
Now, I've heard a lot of occultists and Satanists and those type of people are very, very loving, very welcoming. Like they're just, they just from day one, they're just going to like be there for you. And I find that interesting because since Jesus calls us to love and love is of God, but would you say, and I don't know the answer to this, but would you say that they're truly loving, or do you think it's more of just to like lure people in and, kind of bring them in, almost like, drugs, the first hit is free, but that gets you in the door. Is it more like that, do you think?
Yeah, to be honest, my personal belief is that they themselves, or I'd like to believe that they themselves do not mean to be bad. Again, they are misled, and therefore they mislead other people. I think that they genuinely believe that they're doing something good, and because they're so misled, obviously they can, well, the blind lead the blind, basically.
Yeah. And so they welcomed you in, and you obviously had nowhere to go, so you went there. And what happened, like once you got in, they accepted you, and what happened after that?
Yeah, they accepted me, and I'm very ashamed to say that, but as I said, I was doing things behind my husband's back when he was physically violent and all that, and obviously I could have stayed in this lodge for only as long, and one of my I'll just call it as it is, one of my ex-lovers was the only person that I knew at that time in England, that I knew well, and he helped me to rent room somewhere else, etc. But it was town where I could say the town is the heart of yet another, even more spiritually dangerous cult. And I was interested in that cult as well, and they welcomed me just the same. Yeah.
And you got into all these occult practices, you got into magic, you got into like very demonic type things. And and it's very interesting that they call, this, the devil, who is, the light bearer, but they think, oh, well, he's the true light. He brings light, when in fact he's evil. So interesting, since Jesus says that, the devil is the father of lies, and whenever he speaks his native language, it's a lie. And so that's the whole lie there, is that, God is the real evil one who brings tragedy and suffering into this world. And he's the light bearer who can help people and cure people. And sad that so many people actually buy this. And, it reminds me of, I don't know if people have seen the movie Doctor Strange, but in Doctor Strange,
Mhm.
he,
Haven't.
no, there's the good world, spirit world, and there's a bad world with, really powerful evil, demons, and then the good world, that too. But, in this one particular world, there's this one spirit, or I don't exactly know what he is, power, called Dormammu, and he kind of runs the dark world, and he promises everybody, everlasting life. He promises everybody all these good things, and so the people who are fighting against the good guys think they're doing the right thing. They think they're trying to have life. They think they're being misled, when in fact this guy is lying to them the whole time. And once they have their everlasting life and they finally get to him, that's when the torture begins, the suffering begins, the nightmare begins, because they had bought a lie. And it kind of reminds me of that. And it's very sad that so many people are buying a lie, but they think it's the truth.
Yeah. I think, again, most of people, definite majority of people I've met, they want good, and they want good for themselves, for other people, um but because evil is so intelligent, as a whole, evil's much more intelligent than we are. And
Yeah.
obviously, sometimes we think that things are good, but if we do not turn to Christ, we just don't know. We do not know ourselves what's right, what's wrong. We think we do, but that's the pride.
No, you're right. And it's 100% right. It reminds me of Adam and Eve from the beginning. The first thing the devil told them was a lie. God said, you can eat from all the trees of the garden except one, right? And what did the devil say?
Mm-hmm.
Why won't God let you eat from any of the trees of the garden? The very first thing he said was a lie.
Mm-hmm.
And he
Yeah.
wasn't going to go tell, he's smart, like you say, so much smarter than us, which is why when we leave God, we die. Like when the devil stopped believing in God for 1 second and his pride took over, it just overcame him and ended up getting booted from heaven. When Adam and Eve took their eyes off God for a second, they lost that too. And the whole story of humanity is that we need to stay close to God, because when we don't, then we believe anything. And the devil's generally not going to tell you, hey, don't, go kill somebody, because we're not going to. He's not going to say, oh, go steal that car over there, because we're not going to. But he will say things like, hey, you don't really need to go to church every week, do you? I mean, God understands you're busy. God understands that you have things going on. You don't need to go every week. Or, your parents were really mean. They were evil to you. That's not the truth. God would never want that for you. Come to me, so he literally poisons our minds and tries to get us to go away from God, when in fact it's Jesus Christ who said that he is the way, he is the truth, and he is the life, and he's the tree, we're the branches, and as long as we're connected to him, we have that life. And you left that. So many people leave that. And even people who don't go down the occult or get into Satanism, and they're just living ordinary average day lives. They're, watching Netflix every day, going to work, coming home, playing video games, coming home, going out to the bar. They're not necessarily killing anyone or worshiping Satan, but Satan really doesn't need to get them either, because he's going to have them in the end. When you don't follow God now, you're already on the path downward, and so it's like he almost doesn't want to interfere to not change anything of that, or make it seem like he doesn't even exist. Religion's not real. All the lies that he tells us.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it's also that humans rely too much on we humans rely too much on our logic, and we overrate it, and we think we can explain everything with our logic. And well, logically, it doesn't make sense. Why should I'm not a bad person if I don't go to church every Sunday. So, I'm a good person, blah, 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 if I do this and that. But, if we don't trust God, and we try to explain everything with logic, which is very limited, we might get trapped into a lot of things. Yeah.
Yeah, not might, we will.
In my opinion,
in some way.
Opinion, yeah.
So, all right, you got into this bad cultic satanic cult, which was worse than the other one, and they were worshiping really bad stuff, and you say that you still in the midst of it, God was calling you. God was still working in your heart because he knew deep down inside you wanted to find him. He knew from a young age you just wanted to know the truth and you wanted to find him. And even though you're going about it the wrong way, you say he was still working in your life at this time and you had a desire to go to church. So can you talk a little bit about that? That's like crazy.
Yeah, well, that's beautiful, crazy for once. Yeah, that
Yeah.
I think he worked at that point more than ever, because I needed him more than ever at that time. And yeah, never ever in my life had I felt as much yearning for God, the Christian God, as then. And it was probably for the first time that I felt it. Um, Maybe part of this was my bit of a rebellious nature, because if my mother told me that I have to go to church, I didn't want to. And if they told me that, that Christian church is evil, I was thinking, oh, who's going to tell me what to do or where to go? So, part of me wanted to just be free and have freedom of choice. But a great part of me was looking for some kind of direction. And I went there because I thought they're going to lead me somewhere. I thought they're going to guide me. I thought they're going to give me answers. And there was nothing of it. It was one big void, nothing. It was just there was no direction in all of that, and I felt extreme emptiness. I constantly argued with people around me. I was losing my jobs. Everything was going wrong, and I didn't have any anchor, anything to hold on to. And so I secretly started to go to church because I was scared. Obviously, we were threatened during our initiations, and so I was scared. I didn't know how serious they were about the threats, but my yearning for God was stronger than the fear of death at some point. Yeah.
Oh, that's crazy. And so you want to find God at this point and you're seeking him and you're secretly going to church while, being in a satanic cult. And uh what happened after that? Like, how did God find you and how did you get out of this cult and in a sense come back to God?
I told them at some point. I was thinking, you know what, if they're going to do what they're going to do, what they said they're going to do, well, so be it. At least I'll die with Christ, and at least I'll go to the right place. I suddenly started to be Christian at heart. And
And just to be clear, they threatened you in your life, right?
oh
So
yeah,
you were like
with details. Yeah,
thinking you're going to die anyways at some point. So at least you want to get right with God, right?
that's correct. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And yeah, so I eventually I asked them. I was scared, but I asked them. I said, well, what if I tried to be a bit woolly? I said, what if I try different kinds of religions? Like maybe I'll try a bit of Buddhism, a bit of Hinduism, a bit of that, and maybe Christianity as well. And they were okay with every single religion but Christianity. But they said, yeah, if you want to, you can go to church, but this religion that makes sense, but Christianity is blah blah blah. They were very much against it. They hated it, but they said it's okay. Yeah, I can go to church. So I was like, well, maybe I'm not gonna die. But yeah, so I started going to church, and ever since I started going to church, I just fell in love with God again. And I knew that I need to resign. I can't just be there. They were more like social meetings there, and but at the same time, once in a while, some kind of rituals that seemed innocent, but they aren't. They really aren't.
And then you
That's
got
also,
into
in my
like,
opinion.
I'm sorry, go
Yes,
ahead.
right.
Uh, I was just gonna say you got into drugs at that point, right?
Oh gosh, yeah, that was one of the cult members. It was very strange. I thought it was maybe intuition. I thought it was OCD because I suffered from OCD when I was a little child because of the abuse. So before I met that person, because he was initiated later than I was, before I even met him, he was going by train to be introduced to us so that we can check if we accept him or not and to initiate him or not. And before that, something really strong told me inside. I nearly heard the voice, but it was like an external thought that do not meet that person, make any excuse and just turn around, do not meet that person. Dark forces, dark forces. And it kept repeating. And I was thinking, goodness me, again, the nerves took the better of me. And of
But
course,
God
I
was
just
warning
rebelled.
you.
Yeah, God, Holy Spirit. Yeah, maybe guardian angel. I don't know, but it was definitely right. It turned out to be, and of course I disregarded it because I thought, again, my logic was misleading me because I thought I knew better, and I met him, and he seemed lovely. He seemed completely harmless, and I was thinking, yeah, that was just stupid. Luckily, I didn't listen to that, whatever it was. And it turned out later that well, we had a fling. We were boyfriend and girlfriend, if you will, and it turned out, and he, yeah, just like you mentioned, drugs. And I never tried drugs before, never. I'd never even saw weed before. I mean, I didn't even smoke cigarette before, nothing. And suddenly he said, yeah, it's gonna be, because I was on antidepressants, and he said, yeah, this is much better. This is good for PTSD, and I obviously had PTSD, so. And he introduced me to hard drugs, and I got hooked for a while. Yeah, and basically that was the beginning of the end of me being in the cult, luckily and scarily in a way because of the way it ended.
Yeah. How did it end?
It ended with him, well, with me and him ending up being friends, like really good friends for a while after the fling didn't work out. And he gave me, I quit drugs. I managed to get out of addiction because I was heavily addicted for a while. And I managed to get out of the addiction, but because of something, blah, 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 he persuaded me to take one very hard drug that I never tried before, for the maybe first and last time. And I did. And somebody who was jealous that I was there called the police on him, knowing that he's a drug dealer, because it turned out he was a drug dealer. And under influence, very strong influence of that drug that I never tried before, very high, extremely high. When the police came, I just had some weird hallucinations that the policewoman is an angel. I have to tell her the truth. And from A to Z, I told everything. I told about him being drug dealer. He was arrested then and there. I told everything. What the cult is doing. Everybody who belongs to that cult. I told them where the so-called king lives, because this cult has 6 kings. One of them lives here in England, in my town. And I told them everything that I was not supposed to tell. So obviously I have to watch my back now. And goodness me, was I wrong to think that the other side is right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or even loving. So much for being loving
Oh,
and kind
loving,
and accepting.
Yeah. So loving that they can, yeah, so loving that they're threatening me, right? Yeah.
Right. And so since then you've come back to church fully, you've come back to God fully. And I thought it was interesting that it's actually terrible. It's not interesting, it's terrible. But um, since they were into occult and magic, which is real, I guess they kind of got revenge on you, right? They put this magic spell on you and it, really hurt you
Yeah.
for a long time.
Oh, yeah. I have my I didn't even tell you yet because we didn't have a chance to speak before that, but it now turns out that I have some rare disease with my bone melting. I don't even know exactly what it is, but they suspect that it's cancerous. And ever since I told that stuff on that cult and cult members, um, somebody who knew somebody who told me that that person put a hex on me. I'm pretty sure that he wasn't the only one who did, because that's what they were doing when somebody was annoying them or so-called pissing them off. And obviously I did. And ever since, yeah, I had a broken shoulder 8 months ago, but it never healed. I had all kinds of diseases since, that very mysterious ones. And a few months ago, for a couple of months, I was bedbound, and I thought I was dying. Actually I was dying in a way, because I don't even know where to start the symptoms, because there were so many.
Well, the ones
And
that stuck out to me is, I thought it was interesting. You said you were fainting, you were sweating,
oh yeah,
shivering,
yeah,
throwing
yeah,
up,
yeah, absolutely.
abdominal pains, head pains, and just people.
Everything, yeah.
So people know head pains and abdominal pains and throwing up are clear signs of demonic attacks on you. People who get into the occult or voodoo will start having excruciating headaches, pains, throwing up everywhere. And, and you've had a lot worse than that, all these disease, everything all at once. You were like healthy, and then everything you could possibly imagine just hit you right after he put that hex or magical spell on you, and
Yeah.
crazy. So how did you, I mean, you couldn't even get out of bed. You couldn't work. You couldn't do anything. So how did that get fixed? Like, how did you get out of that?
I didn't know there was, well, I thought I was dying. I was pretty sure that I was dying. The doctors were helpless and hopeless. I had home visits, which is very rare here in England. It doesn't happen. But because I was already in a state of complete agony day by day, and I couldn't get out of the room, let alone the flat. My boyfriend then called the doctors and fixed the home visits and stuff. And they had no clue. All the blood tests and everything, which were taken here by nurse, because I was bedbound, they were all perfect. Everything was perfect. Yet I was fainting multiple times. The ambulance was here regularly, and fainting in a laying position. I had heart palpitations. I was throwing up. Yeah, everything.
Wow.
So the doctors didn't see anything wrong yet. They were clueless completely. They just admitted it, that they were clueless, and obviously they saw me in this agony and everything, and yet nothing showed anything wrong with me. And because I knew with all my being, I think I know now what it feels like when you know you're dying. And I was madly scared, and I wasn't ready to die. And I was thinking, okay, but if I am going to die, which I was pretty sure I was going to, I'm not being a drama queen. I've been through a lot, but I was dying. I was pretty sure, and I'm not exaggerating. And I wasn't sharing that information that I knew that I was dying, because obviously, because I didn't want to be a drama queen, but I knew with all my being that I was dying. And I was thinking, since I am dying, I want to at least, my mother sent me holy water from Lourdes, and she told me to just drink bits of it and blah blah blah, and I did. Nothing helped, unfortunately. Nothing helped. So I was willing to try everything, but I was
Well, you
thinking,
had
okay,
something
since I'm dying
strong.
anyway.
You had like a magical spell
So
that was strong against you. So you probably needed more than a little holy water.
very strong. And so I was thinking, since I'm dying, I was regretting that I'm not in Poland, because there were so many priests there. I was thinking to be able to fly there, but I wasn't even able to get out of my room. And so I wanted to see my parents at least for the last time, but I couldn't, because obviously I couldn't move. And I wanted to go to confession for the last time, and the Eucharist, just in case I die. Well, because I knew I'm going to die. So I was thinking, well, my faith was wobbly at that time. So I was thinking, well, maybe that's going to help. Well, it's not going to hurt, but there was no way that I would get out. So I was thinking, maybe my partner would find a priest that would come over and just confess me and give me the Eucharist. But it turned out that right next to me there was a church, and my partner somehow persuaded me, even though I felt I'm going to throw up on the way, and I was drenched in sweats, and every movement hurt me so much I can't even tell you what it felt like. And he said, slowly, I'll hold your hand. And he's kind of on a fence with his faith. Much more into New Age, as I told you, which is very interesting. But I'm so grateful that he took me there, and slowly I felt like I'm going to throw up. It was horrible. The beginning of the mass, I was sitting all the time. Obviously, I wasn't able to stand. I felt like I'm going to faint. I was drenched in sweats, but I really wanted to go to confession. It was luckily the day of confession. It was Saturday, and I went. And again, I don't want to exaggerate, and I'm not exaggerating, but it just went away. Everything just disappeared. No doctors can explain why and what happened. Yeah.
Wow. So you went to confession, you confessed everything. And then
Yeah.
when the sins got washed away, so did all the evil spirits, the hexes, the curses, and everything that was put on you, just washed away by the power of Jesus Christ.
Yeah. So it seems, I mean, if it was coincidence, then that would be a heck of a coincidence, right?
Yeah, no, it's not coincidence.
It's not a coincidence, and I can't stress enough the power of the sacrament of reconciliation.
I actually have two books. One is called An Exorcist Tells His Story, and it's the chief exorcist of Rome who did thousands, tens of thousands of, exorcisms and deliverances and that sort of thing. And he's like the expert in the field. And he says that confession is more powerful than exorcism. A really, really good confession just literally rips the devil out of you. Everything because it's sin that attaches us to the dark side. It's sin that makes us rebel against God. It's sin where we choose the devil over God. And when we give that back up and God fills us with his forgiveness, his peace, and his light, it's incredibly powerful. And that top that off with the Eucharist, which is divine light in Jesus himself. It's so powerful. And then the other book I have is called The Rite. And it was a movie based off of it, even though the movie's kind of ridiculous in many ways. Most of it's false. The book is The Modern Making of an Exorcist. And this priest, the guy who's shadowing the priest and doesn't even really believe in God. He thinks this is all nonsense. And many of the priests in the Catholic Church think it's nonsense, but they're nonsense. And they believe the devil over God. But this priest went to get trained as an exorcist. And as he was in his training, he fell off a cliff and like hundreds of feet down. And I think he was broke so much of his body, and he was in the hospital, I think I don't remember how long, it may be like 6 months, like 8 months, like he thought he was going to die. And the whole time he was there, he was so mad at God. He couldn't move even a finger. He had the most excruciating pain he's ever felt in his life. And it was every second of every day until he got better. And he was so, so angry at God. Why would you let that happen? How could you let that happen? I'm trying to serve you and you did this to me, blah, blah, blah. And then he realized that when he started exorcisms, God revealed to him, this is how someone who's possessed feels. How you felt in that excruciating pain every second is how people who are attacked by the devil and have those demonic infestations, that's how they feel. And that's exactly what you're saying. You couldn't even take a step without the most excruciating pain. I felt
I was losing humanity literally because of the amount of, I think around 6th or 7th week, I started to lose my will to live, really, because it was just, that was the worst time of my life, definitely. Yeah.
Well, praise God that he freed you from that, and he gave you the confession, he gave you Eucharist. Praise God, right?
Praise God, absolutely. Absolutely.
And then since then, it's not like, you're fully in the clear, because you have a lot of, in a sense, demons still attached to you that you're freeing yourself from. You have a lot of past life, past curiosities, past attachments that you are freeing yourself from. And, this is the thing. This is, in a sense, why most exorcisms, they say, take a really long time. They don't happen overnight, because it's not just getting rid of the devil, but it's teaching people how to come back to God, how to pray to God, how to have the strength they need to overcome these things and fight these things. And that's what you've been doing. You've been fighting these now for the last year. And, the more you come closer to God, the more you receive the Eucharist, the more you go to confession. You always say you feel completely free, right? Like just it's the best you feel.
I go regularly now. I go every Saturday. I go regularly because I think I suppose that in my case, the sin, because we all sin every time, even though it seems like, oh no, I'm careful, but accidentally we sin, so that gives the hex and these people and these powers some kind of little access, or not so little access, depending on the sin, to my soul again. So I'm not going to suddenly be healthy for the rest of my life because I went to confession. It has to be, it's like I don't know, like a relationship. You have to keep working on it all the time. And relationship with God, why would it be any different? You have to just keep working on it all the time.
Yeah. And my opinion. No, I think you're right. I think that's a good way to put it. We don't want to backslide or anything like that. We want to keep our foot forward, put our hand to the plow, as Jesus says. But what would you say to people? what do you want to leave people with? What message do you have for them from your experiences? And, what do you kind of want to share?
Um, um, do not stray from God, but it's easier said than done. Of course, I would recommend, but it's easier said than done, and I understand it. We people must do everything to not let to keep our eyes on God, on Christ himself, rather than what kind of example other people give us. Because if we judge other people and see, oh, they're not good Christians, etc., etc., it can lead us to such a destructive path in the end, just because somebody gives a bad example. Maybe not, maybe it's the devil, very intelligent entity working through them, to discourage us. So instead of seeing that these Christians are bad, or these Christians are this and that, just focus the eyes on Christ himself, rather than on whether these Christians are good example or bad example, because it might really mislead us.
And this is a good message too for those people who claim to be Christian but don't live it, who are living for the devil all while having the name Christian. And that goes for parents too, or really anybody who says that they're Christian but they're living lives of sin, and they're not trying to give up that sin. They're indulging in that sin. They're justifying that sin, and they're not trying to get. There's a difference between Christians who are caught in sin and who are struggling and fighting against it and hate the sin but keep falling into it, but they're getting stronger and trying more, versus those people who are just living sinful lives and don't dislike it, don't hate it, and they claim to be from Christ, and they can pray rosaries and chaplets and everything else that they want to, but they're not going to go to heaven. They're not of Christ. And Jesus says you can tell a tree by the fruit that it bears. If it bears good fruit, it's a good tree. If it bears bad fruit, it's a bad tree. And there are so many people who pray and pray and pray, but they never change their actions, which means there's something defective going on inside that needs to be fixed, healed, cleansed, renewed, or even exorcised. But we need to come back to Christ, and that only happens through prayer, fasting, and the sacraments. And so I want to thank you, Lena, for sharing your story today and for helping people to. Oh my gosh, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. And I think I hope and I pray, and I have been praying, that this reaches and helps so many people to see the power of God. I mean, if people actually knew people, can you imagine throwing up every day and fainting all the time and shivering and sweating constantly and every part of your body being in pain so you can't leave the house for months? I mean, you just feel like you're going to die every second. And then you go to confession and you give your life to Christ, and he destroys that darkness in a second. I mean, think about Mark chapter 5 in the Bible. Jesus said, "What is your name, demon?" And the demon said, "Legion, because there are many of us in this man." I mean, he was infested with demons. And Jesus said, one word, go. The devil was like, okay, I'm gone. I'm not going to argue. So, the power of Jesus Christ is so powerful. The power of the light, the power of goodness, beauty, and God Almighty, who is the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, the Alpha and the Omega, the one who has already conquered sin and death, who has the victory forevermore. He is on the throne. Don't doubt it, people. He is alive. He's on the throne. We just celebrated Easter, and that's what it represents. He's risen. Hallelujah. And he is Lord and Lord alone. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. So again, thank you, Lena. I'm sorry for babbling on, but thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
And thank you all, people, for tuning into our Catholic Truth podcast. Please share this with people. Please help to get the word out there. And if you want more daily inspiration, or if you want to learn your faith or come back to Christ even more, and you feel like this is a call to you, I really need to get right with God, check out our playlists on our channel. We have a Catholic Truth spirituality playlist, which talks about how to pray, how to come closer to God, how to overcome sin, how to deal with stress, anxiety, perfection, and things that keep us from God. Check those out. Also, check out our social media and everything else that we have down below. Keep praying for us. Please pray for Lena. Please pray for the work that we do. And we are always praying for you. May God bless you all.
God bless you.
Thank you. And